Good afternoon. All right, good, we're all awake. So abundance, the future is better than you think. And my goal here is to sort of wake you up on where the world is going and how fast it's getting there. Because we're in the midst of an extraordinary transformational change. I'm going to hit on three subjects here. The first, what I call 10 to the 9th plus thinking. It's the notion that you have the ability today to touch the lives of 1 billion people on this planet. And that's extraordinary. The second is crowdsourcing or X Prizes. How do you get the most brilliant people on the planet to help you solve your problems? And the third is the subject of the book. I want to end on the notion of not only how the world is getting better, but how it's getting better at an extraordinary rate, and how it's going to transform your lives, your business, this planet, and the planets we move off onto. So, let's start with the notion that we're living in a day and age where literally you, your entrepreneurial companies, your startups, the corporations you're part of, can literally take on and do what only governments and large corporations could do before. You are so empowered right now to do extraordinary things. There is nothing you can't take on. And I believe that. There is no challenge, no problem that we can't solve given the right group of people, capital, and technology. That's the world we're living in. And that's what I hope to show you if you don't really know that in your hearts. Because what an extraordinary time to be alive. And my goal here is to get you to think about, while you're on this planet, for however long you're here, to think about, what are you doing with your life? Because if you're not taking on solving some of the world's biggest problems, why not? Because we're also living in a time, in a day, and an age where there's this beautiful alignment, where the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest market opportunities. And you can become both a billionaire and a savior of the planet at the same time. And that's extraordinary. So why not play that game? Why not play that game in a huge way? So back about 3.5 years ago, I had the pleasure of founding a new university called Singularity University, along with a good friend, Ray Kurzweil. You may know some of his writings. The Singularity is Near is a book I commend to you. And you know, I spent a lot of time in school. I got a 6-pack of degrees really to become a private astronaut or become a government astronaut, and gave up on the government as the way I was going to do that. But in the process, you know, I learned that when you go to Stanford or Caltech or Supiro or Oxford, whatever, you go and you get your PhD, you become such an expert in such a narrow field. You literally become an expert on an ion channel in a particular neuron in a particular insect. You know, but you know that ion channel really well. In fact, you need a PhD to understand someone's PhD title. And that's great in terms of progress, but it doesn't really help you get the big picture. And there was no place that I could go to really understand, get a sort of an emotional, fully immersive view of where are all the technologies going. And how do I use them in concert in new ways to put a lever on the world to solve the biggest problems out there. So I got together with Ray and started this university in partnership with NASA and Google and Autodesk and Cisco and Nokia and Genentech, called Singularity University. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But the first part of this section of this talk is really what we teach there. We teach a 10-week graduate program for the world's top entrepreneurs. We teach a 4-day and a 7-day program for executives around the planet to give you an understanding of where these technologies are today in the lab and where they're going to be in 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years. And how do you use them to leapfrog the competition or keep from being decimated? So I'm going to give you that 1 week in 12 minutes. I'm going to start with perspective. And I want everybody at least to walk away with this, which is, how is your brain wired? You see, we evolved, our bodies, our minds evolved in response to the environment in which we became the human species. And if you look back hundreds of thousands of years ago as we evolved on the plains of Africa, the world back then would best be described as local and linear. It was local in that everything that affected you was within a day's walk. If something happened on the other side of the planet, you wouldn't know about it. It wouldn't affect you. It was linear in that the world of your grandparents, your parents, your kids, their kids. The world didn't change from millennia to millennia, from century to century. It was pretty much the same. And it was those conditions under which our brains evolved. So when we have biases, what we call cognitive biases, it's because we grew up in a local and linear world. But the world today is anything but that. We're living in a world which is global and exponential. Something happens in South Korea or China, we know seconds later, right? Something, the world is changing at such a rate that it's not different over centuries, it's different over years. Think about the technologies that didn't exist 10 years ago that we're totally dependent on now. Whether it's, Google Maps or ubiquitous Wi-Fi or YouTube or whatever it might be. So this chart, this yellow curve is exponential growth. We all know it. You go to Best Buy, your computer is twice as fast this year for the same price as it was last year. Your phones are more capable, your software is more capable. The red line is humans. We're pretty much a flat linear system. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't had a brain upgrade since birth. And the difference between the two is what I call disruptive stress. It's the notion that the world is changing, but we're not. And the result is you've got literally $100 billion companies going out of business overnight, and billion-dollar companies coming out of no place. Because the yellow line, the exponential, is what technology is doing. The red line is what the CEO, the board of directors are thinking. You're not ready. We're not ready. No one is. You can't hardly see it coming because you can't think in exponential terms, at least not easily. And all of these technologies, and I'm going to speak about a few of these, are what's growing at exponential technology rates. And it's transforming our planet. Every company, every industry, every area, period. Take, for example, Kodak. We all know this story. 1996, it's got a market cap of $28 billion. 140,000 employees, 16 billion of revenue. Today, it's bankrupt. Less than 1/10 the employees, a market cap dropped down to under $100 million. What happened at the same time? Facebook buys Instagram for $1 billion with 13 employees. We're living in a very different world. Chad Hurley goes from starting YouTube on his credit cards to selling it to Google 18 months later for $1.6 billion. Groupon goes from 0 to $6 billion valuation in 2 years. We have a faster rate of wealth creation than ever before in human history. And what's underpinning that is the power you have to touch the lives of billions of people, to take on and do what only governments and large corporations could do before. And if you don't realize that, you're not utilizing it. So what does exponential growth feel like? Well, if I were to take 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, any one of you could project, well, I'd probably end up at the exit sign over there. We're all good at linear extrapolation. That's the way our wiring of our brain is. But if I said to you, I want to take 30 exponential steps, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on, and I asked you, where am I going to end up? I won't ask anybody, but you might say London or Tokyo or Beijing. Very few people would actually inherently understand, no, it's 1 billion meters away, or 26 times around the planet. And I still get shocked when I think about that. 26 times around the planet. Because your brain doesn't think exponentially, but that literally disruptive difference between your expectations and reality is what creates such amazing opportunity or amazing collapsing force. And how do you project exponential growth? I had a chance to spend time at Singularity University with the founders of Siri before they sold their software to Apple. And they said, when we started Siri, the technology to build the voice recognition system did not exist. The processing speed did not exist. We actually had to anticipate where it was going to be in 3 or 4 years and build the system around where it was going to be. Because today, if you build a company or a product or service based on where the technology is today, you're out of business by the time you take it to market. So how many of you are skating to the puck and actually designing something that doesn't yet exist to intercept the technology that you're creating? Another part of exponential growth, this is from a talk that Eric Schmidt gave in Abu Dhabi at the Abu Dhabi Media Summit. So an exabyte is 1 billion gigabytes. You know the thing you stick in the side of your computer, the thumb drive, is a gigabyte. 1 billion of those is an exabyte. From the beginning of time through about 2003, the world created about 5 exabytes of data. Just a figure, just for a figure of merit. In 2010, we created 5 exabytes in 2 days. Gets better. In 2013, we're creating 5 exabytes in 10 minutes. We're living in the middle of a data explosion. And it's only getting more. Every time you pull out your iPhone and take a happy snap or a video and send it out, you're part of that. And so how you analyze that data and provide it to your customers in a way that they can understand, where you take information and turn it into knowledge, is only going to get more and more valuable. So all of this is made possible by this thing called Moore's Law. You've seen this curve before. It's how fast computers are. On the left-hand axis is a log curve. I'm going to remember, on a log curve, a straight line is an exponential. This is back in 11th grade high school. I'm going to bring you way back there. I'm sorry about that. And this is the computational speed for a $1,000 investment over the last 100 years. 2 things I want you to take away from this. Number one, because the curve is curving upwards and not a straight line, not only is it an exponential, but the rate at which computers are getting faster is itself getting faster. The second thing I want you to take away over the last 100 years is that computers don't get faster in good times and slower in bad times, or peace times and war times. The computers are accelerating in their speed independent of anything we're doing, because we're using faster computers to build faster computers. And it's been pretty consistent for 100 years, so I would project it's going to continue to be kind of consistently getting faster. And if we look at that, and this is a curve out of The Singularity is Near, Ray Kurzweil's book, what we'll see is that in 2010, the average $1,000 laptop, like the one running this program, was calculating at 100 billion calculations per second. Big number, 10 to the 11th cycles per second. Fast forward 12 years from now, the average $1,000 laptop is calculating at 10 to the 16th cycles per second. What does that mean? Go to a neurophysiologist. They will tell you that's the rate at which the human brain calculates. How fast your auditory and visual cortex processes the stuff coming into your mind. So what happens when the average $1,000 laptop is computing at the rate of the human mind? But it doesn't stop there, does it? Because 25 years later, the average $1,000 laptop is computing at the rate of the entire human race. All I can say is, you know, my kids are going to have a lot easier time with their homework than I did. But it's also going to change every business we have. And if you're not thinking about this, then you're going to be part of that disruptive stress on the negative side, right? So these are a little bit of what we teach at Singularity University. These are 3 covers from last year. 3D printing, plugging the internet into the human brain, and yes, there are labs working on that right now. The whole field of optogenetics, how do we take digital signals and interface them with neurons? You know, Google on the brain is not just a concept, it's something in our future. And artificial intelligence, AI, coming online, how it's going to translate and impact your industry. So I'm going to speak about, very quickly, AI, cloud computing, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, some of the fields that are going to transform every one of your businesses. So the first is artificial intelligence. You know, Siri is a very early version of that. Last year there was an epic event, which was when IBM's Watson computer took on the top 2 all-time Jeopardy players. The guy who had won the most money, and the guy who had won the most games. And you know, Jeopardy is not an easy game. I suck at it personally. And it's you know, it's the nuance of human language. You need to understand what the sarcasm or the you know, whatever the quip might be, and have a huge font of knowledge. And I searched for the best article title, and I love this one. Watson vanquishes human opponents. So how many of you actually saw the winning on television? Raise your hand. Small numbers. I'm going to play a clip from that next. Pay attention. Take a look at what one computer that today fits in something about the size of the stage, tomorrow will literally fit inside your body, what it can do.
Ken, you're in the first position. Please make a selection.
Oh, I've never said this on TV. Chicks dig me for 200, please, Jimmy.
Kathleen Kenyon's excavation of this city, mentioned in Joshua, showed the walls had been repaired 17 times. Watson.
What is Jericho?
Correct.
400, same category.
This mystery author and her archaeologist hubby dug in hopes of finding the lost Syrian city of Urkesh. Watson.
Who is Agatha Christie?
Correct. Watson.
Who is Mary Leakey?
You're right. Watson.
What is Crete?
Yes.
Let's finish Chicks Dig Me.
Ed Mel?
I love that. I swear they did that on purpose. So that's artificial intelligence. Now, what makes that possible is a combination of software and computational hardware. And computational hardware used to be one of the scarcest resources. If I needed a computer for a month to work on something, I'd have to be the chairman of MIT's computer science department 20 or 30 years ago. Now, that kind of computational speed is literally in everybody's lap at a fraction of a penny per core hour. But if you need 1,000 computers, the cloud is exploding. Literally, companies like Amazon and Apple and Google and Rackspace and so forth, providing you as much computational speed, literally what my friends at Autodesk call infinite computing, as you need, when you need it, no matter where you are on the planet, no matter where you live, what you want, you've got it. Infinite computing. The next field, robotics. So this is a robot called the PR2 that a friend of mine, Scott Hassan out of Willow Garage, is building. He's an early Googler and made a huge amount of money in the web space, has committed $1 billion plus to building the next generation of personal robots. Imagine these robots literally doing any menial tasks anywhere. They will transform your business when the cost of labor becomes the cost of electricity. This is out of Boston Dynamics. This is called Cruelty to Robots. I mean, how many of you had an emotional reaction when you see this guy kicking the robot? And I'm serious, it's going to change a lot of how we do our work and our business. The flow of jobs to India and China will stop when the labor rates are the same because the cost of electricity is the same here as it is there. So, that's AI and cloud computing and robotics, 3D printing. The whole field of the democratization and distribution of the manufacturing process. When we're going from, instead of printing a little bit of carbon on a piece of paper with a printer, to being able to print any 3D structure you want, anywhere, anytime. It's really the future of the Star Trek replicator, where with any materials, glass, plastic, titanium, even human cells, there are labs working on 3D printing kidneys and various organs. So what can you build with that? In the upper left is a structure of structures within structures that can be printed. Here are high temperature turbine blades printed out of titanium. This is a person who lost his lower right limb and scanned and then printed a 3D prosthetic. And this is a full-scale motorcycle in the entrance of Autodesk. And the bottom right is a company that's building 3D walls. Imagine printing a 3D house. The last field I'll talk about is the whole field of genetics, of synthetic genetics. This is a friend, Craig Venter, who sequenced the first human genome in 2001. In 2010, he had the distinction of creating the first synthetic life form. So on a computer, he arranged a series of genes, a series of 1 million nucleotides, 1 million base pairs long. He emailed that million base pair list to a company called Blue Heron that printed out that strip of DNA. He then took that piece of DNA and stuck it into a cell, and the cell booted up to life. Now, because he controlled the genes and the expression of those genes, he literally is beginning to be able to manipulate these life forms. And so life is becoming an information science. And we're going to be able to begin programming it the same way we program computers, to do what you want. And where he's going with this is programming foods and fuels and vaccines. You know, when you eat food, what is food? I'll talk to Mom's Organic Market here. Food is taking the sun's energy, converting it photosynthetically to hydrogen and carbon and high energy bonds, and eating it. It's taking sunlight and powering you, or going through fish or cows, whatever, to meat, to powering you. The process of taking that energy and converting it to food you can eat is actually very inefficient. And there are companies right now working on ways to improve it 100 to 1,000-fold. So at Singularity University, those of you who are interested in continuing education, understanding what we do executive programs. We're sold out till October. If you're interested, singularityu.org is the site. It's 7 days, and in 7 days, you will get an understanding of where all these technologies are and where they're going to go in the next 2, 5, and 10 years that will transform your businesses, period. So if you imagine, and we're going to part 2 of the presentation, if you imagine that this technology is extraordinarily there and powerful, how do you use it to solve the problems that you care about? Well, for me, the problem I cared about, since I grew up in the 60s, I was passionate about spaceflight, was how do I get to space? I mean, I grew up, I drank all the Tang there was. You know, I was ready, absolutely ready. And I realized that my chances of becoming an astronaut through NASA were probably lower than my chances of becoming an NBA All-Star at 5'5". And so I gave up on NASA being the way I was going to get there, and I started building space companies. So one of my companies, we take people to the space station. We've taken 8 clients there so far. We've got 3 available seats. They're $50 million a pop. I'll be taking orders backstage. Another company, we do zero-gravity flights. I took Stephen Hawking up. You may have seen us take him up into zero-G, which was extraordinary. I just announced a company back 2.5 weeks ago with Larry Page and Eric Schmidt and Nate Ross Perot. We're going out to mine the asteroids. There are literally trillions of dollars of rare elements and strategic metals and so forth out there. But I knew building a rocket was hard. And so one day I read this guy's book, The Spirit of St. Louis. And I had no idea that Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic in 1927 to win a prize. I thought he woke up one day and just decided to fly east. But it turns out there was a $25,000 prize announced in 1919 for the first person to fly between New York and Paris. And when Raymond Ortega announced that prize, everybody laughed. Said, "Ah, you idiot. No one can fly from New York to Paris. That's ridiculous." Well, 8 years later, in 1927, 9 different teams had already spent $400,000 trying to go after this guy's $25,000. And I'm making notes in the margins of this book. I'm going, oh my God, this is brilliant. The guy doesn't pay anyone who tries. He only pays for results. Talk about the last presentation. You only pay for results. You only pay the guy who does it. Not the person with a good idea, not the person who's, oh my God, my dog ate my airplane wing or whatever. And all the excuses. And funny thing was that Lindbergh was the most unlikely guy to do this. He was called the flying fool. He'd only been flying for 2 years. No one would sell him an airplane or an engine because they were so scared he would crash on takeoff. So he ended up getting the Ryan Airplane Company, which was doing airmail, to sell him an airplane. He modified it. And he makes the trip across the Atlantic. And he succeeds against all the odds. And what really got me, what was really extraordinary, was not the fact that he made it against all the odds and that, Ortega backed the most unlikely guy who turned out to be the winner, but that within 18 months of Lindbergh's flight across the Atlantic, the marketplace for aviation went up 30-fold. 6,000 tickets sold in 1927, 180,000 sold in 1929. A 30-fold increase. Why? Because this bold demonstration of what was possible changed the marketplace's belief. And what all of you know as marketers and entrepreneurs is that what people believe affects what they buy. So for me, that was amazing. And I said, oh my God, I need to create a prize to open up space, because that was my dream. So literally by the time I had finished reading that book, the idea of creating something called the X Prize came to mind. I had no idea who was going to put up the $10 million, so I called it the X Prize, where the X was going to stand for the name of the person who put up the money. That's where the name came from. $10 million was enough money to incentivize the entrepreneurs, but not the Boeings and the Lockheeds. Had to be privately funded. I wanted them to worry about every penny they spent. A 3-person spaceship meant at the end of the competition, there was a business with, people offering rides with a pilot and 2 paying passengers, or an autopilot and 3 very brave passengers. And we set our own finish line. There was no definition of where space started. We set it originally 100 miles. And when we did the re-entry thermal characteristics from 100 miles coming back in, we said it's too hot. We lowered it from 100 miles to 100 kilometers, knowing full well Americans won't know the difference between the two anyway. I swear I groan every time that gets a laugh. It's so true. And then the most important rule was they had to repeat the flight with the same ship within 2 weeks. Well, the challenge was I didn't have $10 million. And so I decided, after raising $500,000 from St. Louis, to gamble it all. And I went up on stage and I announced our $10 million competition. But I knew how I announced that competition really mattered. So in our minds, there's a line of credibility. And if we announce something below the line of credibility, people dismiss it right away. And then, what most people don't know is you have a line of super credibility in your brain. When you announce something above the line of super credibility, people go, oh my God, that's fantastic. When's it going to happen? So on stage with me, I had not 1 astronaut, but 20 astronauts. I had the Lindbergh family. I had the head of NASA. I had the head of the FAA. And I announced this competition. Front page around the world. No one asked, do you have the money? I didn't. Do you have any teams? No. I had the absolute belief that who would want to pay for this after someone pulls it off? So I hit the road. And I go and I meet with CEO and CMO after CEO and CMO, philanthropists, and Fred Smith. Peter, I love it. It's great. Someone's going to die. Richard Branson, I love it. Can anyone really do this? Why isn't NASA doing this? Someone's going to die. I had that 150 times. 5 years into this, I've got 20+ teams. And people are saying, give it up, Diamandis. It isn't going to happen. And I'm going, no bleeping way. Because I know when I give up, that's when it ends. All right? And you guys have all been there. It's an overnight success after 10 years of hard work. Right? That's the definition when you know you've given it everything. And I had not given it everything. And one day, actually in Fortune magazine, I read about this woman, Anusha Ansari, who had just sold her company for $1.2 billion to Sonos Networks. And it writes in her bio that her dream is to fly on a suborbital flight into space. And I'm going, say that again? I read that line 3 times. I remember exactly where I was. And I was, holy cow. And it was my mission in that moment, right then, right there. I was going to track her down. And I did. Vacationing in Hawaii for the last 2 months. And I was her first meeting when she got back. And they said yes on the spot. And we called it the Ansari X Prize in her honor. And the X sort of stuck around after 5 years of searching and building the brand. And lo and behold, it worked again. 26 teams from 7 countries around the world spent $100 million to go after this $10 million prize. And this was the scene the morning of October 4th, 2004 in the Mojave Desert. Spaceship One suspended below the belly of White Knight One, the carrier aircraft. 30,000 people descended from around the world into the desert. Here are the vehicles under its own power. It's burning nitrous oxide, laughing gas, and polybutadiene, which is tire rubber. Very non-traditional fuel. At altitude, and then back down on the ground, here's the winning moment. On the far left is Anusha, her brother-in-law Amir Ansari. Next to them is myself. Next to me is Paul Allen, who had funded Burt Rutan $26 million to go after the $10 million prize. Now, in all fairness, Bert thought he could do it for 10 million. They're all optimists. And Paul made all of his money back and then some. Next to Paul Allen is Bert Rutan, the designer, an extraordinary, brilliant man. Next to him, Brian Binney, the pilot, Aura Lindbergh. And next to him is Richard Branson, who, after turning me down twice, comes in the week before the flight and licenses the winning technology to create Virgin Galactic. That's why he's Richard Branson. But I'm very thankful because he turned a historic event really into the industry we wanted to kick off. 10 billion media impressions, huge amount of media, front page around the world. I had every sponsor who turned me down came back and said, I really wish we had done that. I said, I know you do. We made the front page of Google, hooked up to our servers, almost took them down. Let me take you back there with a 1-minute video to show you what it looked like. We're announcing today something called the X Prize, a $10 million contest to privately build a spaceship that's able to carry 3 individuals, fly to 100 kilometers altitude, and do that twice inside of 2 weeks.
I have never been myself as creative as I have eyeballing this goddamn prize.
Hello and welcome to Mojave here in the high desert of California on this incredible day. Now you are going to witness history in the making.
Release arm fire.
The Ansari X Prize inspired international competition, drove regulatory reform, and made history.
The X Prize for $10 million.
It ignited a personal spaceflight revolution.
And now the winning vehicle is hanging actually in the center of the Air and Space Museum, right above the Apollo 11 capsule, next to the Spirit of St. Louis that inspired it in the first place. How cool is that, huh? Thank you. So, I mean, these are the hallmarks of an incentive competition. Whether you do them yourselves, you partner with us or someone else, you get 10 to 40 times the prize money spent by all the teams out there around the world trying to solve your problem. How cool is that? You only pay the winner. You don't only get one solution, you get a whole industry built of solutions. And you get non-traditional solutions. And that's a very important thing because a true breakthrough, the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. If it wasn't a crazy idea, it wouldn't be a breakthrough. It would be a small incremental improvement. So I ask you as heads of innovation and CEOs and CMOs, where in your company do you allow crazy ideas to bubble up? Where do you allow them to be tried and fail? Because if you don't create a culture that allows that to occur, you're stuck incrementalisms. You're stuck moving very slowly. On the heels of this, I ended up building a board of trustees that I'm very proud of. First, Larry Page and Elon Musk and James Cameron, Ratan Tata, Ray Kurzweil, Jim Giannopoulos, Dean Kamen, Craig Venter, a number of folks really passionate about building the world's, solving the world's grand challenges and attacking on a global scale some of the biggest issues out there. And today we're creating X Prizes in a range of areas: life sciences, exploration in partnership with Shell, energy and the environment with Cisco, and education and global development. A few of the prizes, we have a number of prizes active right now. I'll mention a couple. The Google Lunar X Prize, it's $30 million. And all you have to do to win the $30 million is build a robot and land it on the surface of the moon. Send back photos and videos, rove a half a kilometer. But realistically, so important that NASA has matched it with $30 million of contracts as well, because when a team wins this, and I have confidence they will, they'll reinvent how we explore the cosmos. 26 teams around the world. Now, think of this. Only 2 countries have ever gone to the moon's surface, the US and the Soviet Union. One doesn't exist anymore. These 26 teams are building this kind of capability with teams of 30, 50, 60 engineers. Again, the technology you now have rivals that which governments and billion-dollar corporations had before. Does that have to be a $10 million prize? No, it does not. So Remember the BP oil spill that was going on and on and on and on a couple years ago? Jim Cameron had just joined our board, and he said, Diamandis, you got to do something about this. We need an X Prize. And we looked at it, and we said, okay, we can't cap the spill with an X Prize, but maybe there's something else we can do. When we looked at what was going on, realized that the technology being used to clean up the spill on the ocean surface was the same technology as used with the Exxon Valdez 21 years earlier. In fact, it was the same equipment. Nothing had changed. And if you could clean it up better on the ocean surface, you would keep it from messing up the shorelines. So we put out this prize idea. Wendy Schmidt, wife of Eric Schmidt, who heads the Family Foundation, stepped up and said, I'm in. She put up $1.4 million of prize money, a little over $2 million to run the competition. It was an expensive competition to run. And we basically said, reinvent how to clean up oil spills. We partnered with the world's largest oil spill cleanup facility, which is in New Jersey. And we basically asked teams to double what had been the existing standard. Double the oil cleanup rate of 1,100 gallons per minute. 350 teams around the world registered for this. I had no idea there was 350 teams even thinking about this. And the biggest question was, could a $1.4 million prize really make a difference in a multi-billion-dollar industry like oil? Well, we went from 350 teams down to a top 10. And those top 10 went head-to-head at the OMSAT facility. 7 of the 10 teams doubled what had been the existing standard. The final team quadrupled it, and since then has had a 6-fold increase. Now here's the key point. One of the 7 teams was a family out of Alaska who built the dad's design. The other team, I kid you not, met in a Las Vegas tattoo parlor.
My full-time job back home is running a tattoo studio in Las Vegas.
We get asked all the time, we go, how long have you been in the oil industry? And I go, well, counting today?
That still blows me away. So that illustrates the point that Bill Joy, who was the chief scientist at Sun, is now Kleiner Perkins, said, no matter who you are, most of the smartest people work for someone else. Now that's an interesting sort of back-sided comment, isn't it? But the fact of the matter is you can't possibly employ all the brilliant people on the planet, nor do you have to. No one knows this better than Rob McEwen, who's a good friend of mine, one of my trustees at the X Prize. And unlike many of us, at least unlike me, Rob in 1989 bought a gold mine. And he spent 9 years basically getting the gold mine ready, getting geological data to find out where the gold was in that. And he finally asked his engineers a simple question. He said, how much gold is in the mine? Because I need to build a processing plant. I need to size the plant based on your answer. And they gave an answer which is not really good for keeping your job. They said, we have no idea. So what did Rob do? Where does a gold mine keep their geological data of where all the potential ores are located? Behind their firewall, right? In their safe. It's their crown jewels. Well, he did just the opposite. He said, I'm putting up a $500,000 prize for the team who can look at my data and show me where to find the next 6 million ounces of gold. He put all that data up on the web. He put it on CD-ROMs back then. 1,400 requests, 125 entries came in. The top 3 finalists showed him where to find 6 million ounces of gold. $1 million investment drove a $3 billion return. Now here's the kicker. The 3 winning teams, 2 in New Zealand, 1 in Russia, never came to his mind. All they did was look at the data in a different way. He crowdsourced the genius out there for a fixed amount of money, just like we did it for spaceships or for oil cleanup. So the question is, where are you and your businesses taking advantage of the billions of brilliant people out there who might help you solve your problems? So where's X Prize going next? We just announced something called the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize. $10 million from Qualcomm Foundation for the team who could build a handheld mobile device that any consumer can use that can diagnose them better than a team of board-certified doctors. talk to it, cough on it, do a finger blood prick, and if it diagnoses you better, it's going to involve AI. Remember Watson we talked about? Lab on a chip technology, digital imaging, cloud computing. Here's the cool thing. We announced it. I was on stage at the opening of CES giving a keynote. 3 months later, we have over 180 teams from 25 countries competing for this. I guarantee you, if I had been funding team after team after team, I would run out of money trying to fund 180 teams to solve this problem for me. A mom at 2 a.m. in the morning, this is her doctor. Someone in the middle of Africa who coughs on this and it does an RNA or DNA analysis of a pathogen that it doesn't recognize, calls the CDC for you and prevents the pandemic in the first place. How cool is that, huh? We're looking at launching an autonomous auto X Prize, the first autonomous car. This would be a race among all of them from LA to New York or DC. Reinvent how we drive in the future. Make it safer, give you back your time, give you back fuel economies, change the world. One of my favorites, organogenesis. Go from a, by the way, I should say that these are concepts that are unfunded right now that we're working on designing and finding partners for. I don't want to say these are launched, right? These are all, the Qualcomm tricorder is launched, Auto is half funded. This is something that's not funded yet, but go from a skin cell to a transplantable heart, liver, lung, or kidney. Have a heart attack, lose your kidney or liver, grow yourself a new one. That's where we're going. Not 100 years from now, you know, literally within this next decade. Earthquake prediction. I'm off to meet with an insurance company tomorrow to talk about an earthquake prediction X Prize. I believe, as do many scientists, that the data is out there to be able to actually gather it and hopefully give people a warning. Education. One of the commitments I have made is we're going to launch a series of education X Prizes to reinvent a broken, old, ridiculously old educational system we have. There's no reason why we do not have that. Thank you. The technology exists now to give every kid around this planet an extraordinary education. Imagine Watson, if you would, a few years from now, knowing exactly what sports stars you love, what colors you love, what games you love, what you know, what you don't know, what your languages are, and giving you a personalized education in a way that inspires you, makes it fun and exciting. And last night, I was in New York. I don't know if you guys know Robinhood. It's one of the largest foundations in the world. They raise about $60 to $80 million every year from hedge fund managers. And this was the event last night. They raised $19 million to fund a series of Robinhood X Prizes. And these are to actually combat poverty. So we're going to be going into a brand new arena of looking at incentivized competitions to solve some of the root causes of poverty, initially in New York, but effectively around the world. So I'll end on this last portion, which is we're heading towards a world of abundance. And when I say that, most people go, really? Abundance? Haven't you heard about the European crisis or this or that or so forth? And as Vern said in the beginning, you know, one thing I want us all to realize is that we're lied to. Not by virtue of people aren't telling us the truth, but the fact of the matter is every second of every day on every device you have, your iPad, your cell phone, your TV, your radio, you are transmitted all the negative news that exists in the world everywhere. And the disproportionate amount of negative news colors your world in such a way that it's decimating us. And why does it happen? Because that's the way our brain is structured. The amygdala, an ancient part of the temporal lobe, pays far more attention to negative news than positive news. Because in the old days, the negative news could kill you if you didn't pay attention. So all of this data is sorted through your brain, through the amygdala, and you pay attention. Oh my God, what did he say? And so the news media takes advantage of this. They're a drug pusher, and bad news is your drug. But the fact of the matter is that the world is getting better at an extraordinary rate. And Abundance is the book that I wrote because I was watching this at X Prize and Singularity University. I'm going, my God, this is not the world I'm seeing. Why is everyone seeing this so much differently? And so this is a book that I put all the facts and figures, and there are in fact 90 or 100 graphs in the back to give you the data to look at it yourself if you want. And we're moving into a world where we have the ability, in the next 3 decades to give every man, woman, and child on this planet their basic needs of water, food, shelter, energy, education, healthcare, governance. It's not a world of luxury. It's about a world of possibility, where you're not spending your time scraping and scrapping for a little bit of food and water, where those things are basics, and you're spending your time creating and inventing and designing and solving and educating. That's an extraordinary world. And that's the world we're heading into. Now, scarcity has been the model, but technology is a resource liberating force. Let me give you an example. The guy on the left is Napoleon III. The dude on the right is the King of Siam. The year is about 1840. And Napoleon has invited the King of Siam over for dinner, and Napoleon feeds all of his troops with silver utensils. Napoleon himself is fed with gold utensils, but the King of Siam, so they can impress him, is fed with aluminum utensils. You see, aluminum was the rarest metal on the planet back then. Even though the Earth is 8.3% aluminum by weight, all the aluminum on Earth is bound with oxygen and silicates to form bauxite. There is no pure aluminum in the ground. It was so difficult to extract aluminum from bauxite, it was worth more than platinum and gold. And that's why the tip of the Washington Monument is made of aluminum, because that was the same years it was built in. And then this technology called electrolysis came along. And this technology made aluminum so easy to extract that it went from being the scarcest metal to something we use with a throwaway mentality. From scarcity to abundance by virtue of that technology. So if we use that as a model, energy falls in the same place. We talk about energy scarcity. Everyone's worried about energy this and energy that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living on a planet bathed in energy. We have 5,000 times more energy hits the Earth's surface than we consume in a year. It's just not in usable form yet. But there's good news in this area. The cost of solar halved last year. By 2020, MIT put out a study in February that shows that we are going to be, solar in the sunny parts of the US is going to be at literally a third the cost of the national average. And it's doubling every 3 years. And at 1% today, that means we're only 20 years away, because of exponentials, from meeting 100% of our needs. But if it's doubling every 3 years, 3 years later we got twice as much, and 4 times, and 8 times, 16, 32, and all of a sudden we have an abundant amount of energy. What happens if we have that? Well, water wars don't happen. You know, people talk about water scarcity. But guys, we're living on a water planet. 70% of this planet is covered with water. Yes, 97.5% is salt water. True. 2% is ice, 0.5% is the fresh water we fight over. But just like bauxite was converted to aluminum because of that, so will the salt water to drinkable water. In fact, when I gave my TED Talk this year, I called up my good friend Dean Kamen and said, can I talk about your technology? And he gave me permission. So Dean, if you don't know him, is best known for the Segway scooter, but he's also one of the most brilliant inventors on this planet. Over 1,000 patents to his name, the implantable insulin pump, many different techniques and technologies. Dean has built a device called the Slingshot. It's about the size of a dorm room refrigerator. It's called the Slingshot because that's the technology that David used to slay Goliath. And Goliath here, by the way, is dirty water. Half the disease burden on this planet is due to dirty water. Well, Dean Kamen's Slingshot machine, it generates 1,000 liters of drinking water per day. It's got 2 hoses. One hose goes in anything wet, the latrine, arsenic-infected water, salt water. Out the other hose comes water so pure it meets the medical standards for injectable water. 2 cents a liter, 1,000 liters a day. Here's the kicker. He's demonstrated these in a number of countries. The chairman of Coca-Cola, Muhtar Kent, has agreed to a large-scale demonstration. And if it passes that large-scale demonstration in the next year or two, Coca-Cola will distribute it to 208 countries to give billions of people clean drinking water. I want you to think about the next thing. Thank you. And those applause are for Dean Kamen, an extraordinary man. Think about your cell phone. This is a Maasai warrior in the middle of Kenya. That Maasai warrior on a cell phone has better mobile comm than President Reagan had 25 years ago. Just think about that for a second. And if they're on a smartphone on Google, they've got access to more knowledge and information than President Clinton did 15 years ago. But it gets better than that. What do they have on that cell phone, on that smartphone? GPS, two-way video teleconferencing, HD cameras, HD video, a library of books, whatever they need. Stuff that you and I would have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for just 20 years ago, for free. And they make $2 to $5 a day. What an extraordinary world. They're living in a world of information and communications abundance. I talked about the Tricorder X Prize that will give these same people healthcare abundance. Now take that same idea and forward it to education. Then I talked about the notion of my company Planetary Resources. That, if you think about scarcity of minerals and metals, the Earth is a crumb in a supermarket filled with resources. So the final notion, probably one of the most important ideas I want to pass on to you, is what I call the rising billion. So these white lines are the human population. We just crossed the 7 billion mark. And by the way, those of you who are really scared about population explosion, do you know the one proven way to reduce population in a country? Make it healthier and wealthier. Every country that gets healthier, wealthier, and better educated, their population growth rates plummet. Proven fact. 7 billion. The green line here is internet penetration. In 2010, we had just short of 2 billion people connected online. By 2020, in 8 years, that number is growing to 5 billion people. This shocks me that no one talks about this. In the next 8 years, 3 billion new minds are coming online who've never been heard from before. What do they want? What are they going to consume? What are they going to invent? What are they going to discover? What are you going to sell them? What are they going to create for you? 3 billion people times 365 days a year times even $10 a day, it's tens of trillions of dollars flowing into the global economy. They're going to transform this planet. They're going to change what you're manufacturing, who's buying it, and how we invent things. Folks, we're living into an extraordinary world. A world where you literally have the ability to touch the lives of 1 billion people. To take on the world's biggest problems, become wealthy, and make a difference at the same time. So my passionate request for you is take this on. What are you going to do to create a world of abundance? What are you passionate about leaving as a legacy on this planet? Because it's all possible. The single most critical thing is the committed and passionate human mind. Thank you.